As a way of centering us for our time today, I want to read for you Psalms 107, and I'll be reading verses 1 through 9 and then concluding with verse 43. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, those he redeemed from trouble and gathered us from the lands, from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south. Some wandered in the desert wastes, finding no way to an inhabited town. Hungry and thirsty, their souls fainted within them. Then they cried to the Lord as in their trouble, and he delivered them and their distresses. He led them by a straight way until they reached an inhabited town. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wonderful works to humankind. For he satisfies the thirsty and the hungry. He fills with good things. Let those who are wise give heed to these things and consider the steadfast love of the Lord. Amen. Hi, I want to welcome you to Hobson UMC on YouTube. I am VHD Sonny Dixon Jr. I am the lead pastor here, and I am in for my weekly conversation with my son Trey as we check in with one another, and he gives me an opportunity to help me move and transition from my time of study to beginning to formulate just what I might be saying on this coming Sunday for the message. It's also a time just for us to kind of check in and just to put some context to just what's going on, not only in our lives, but in the life of the community. And so that's always helpful. And it's also a way of me just being able to connect with you and to let you know what I'm thinking, and also a way of being able to say to many of you, thank you for your support in prayers and financially, and however we need to be able to just kind of uplift the ministry here in this community at Hobson. And so I am deeply appreciative of that, and glad whenever you spend some time. I know that there are a lot of options, a lot of things are going on, and we truly are appreciative when you let us know that there was something that we said on the show that may have brought you some comfort at a particular time, something that may have challenged you at a time that you needed challenging. But we're appreciative and thankful for you spending time with us. Always an important time whenever we gather at Hobson is to spend some time and sharing with one another those things that are upon our hearts, that give us a sense of joy, and those things that cause us some concerns. We share it in our time because we invite one another to be in prayer for each other, for we believe that a community that indeed prays together is a much stronger community, and for that I give thanks for the willingness of the people of this community to be in prayer, and so we come. And I would have to say, as we are coming in a time of prayer for this time, because we also do it for our recordings and whenever Trey and I are together, but we're asking for prayer. We have had some challenges with our unit, our air unit, and it's probably, even though we're here at night, it's probably 90-something degrees, and so we're in the dark. And so you all pray, as when you all hear this weekend, pray that Mr. Jones, who services our units, will have said to us that we now have air. So be in prayer for that. I want to ask, though, as a part of our always in our celebrations, we like to celebrate birthdays in our congregation, and many of you who are probably listening are listening to see if we call your name out as on our birthday list. And so we value that, and we do not take that take it lightly, being able to go around. Last week was my birthday, and I want to, before I go into the list, thank all of those of you who sent me some shout outs, and so I know you're listening and you're following instructions. And this week, I want to encourage you, if you know our former bishop in this area, Dick Wheels, he has a birthday coming up this week. A dear friend, also a Methodist clergy person, Carol Calvin Dillon. My brother in many aspects, but most of all with Phi Beta Sigma, Dr. Keith Hassel's birthday, and also another brother, Settle Townsend Jr. Both of them are having birthdays this week. A great Methodist churchwoman, Stella Bean Vincent, has a birthday, and she might as well be clergy in our denomination. But also Councilman Jonathan Hall, Riley Walton, Zenobia McGee, Alex Danielle, Zuri Walker, Cassandra Teague Walker, Clarence Turan, Kerry Ferguson, David Clark, David Fox, Johnny Reynolds, a young man who used to be associated with our youth program, Geraldine Kennedy, Marcus Floyd, Lionel Matthews, Brenda Phillips, Thomas Shaw, Carmen Leith, Yolanda Hockett, Lois Jordan, Robin Battle, a cousin of Trey's, Colin King, Michelle Shaw, Harriet Vaughn Wallace, and last but certainly not least, John Alfred Birdsong. If you know those folk, send them a shout out this week and tell them happy birthday. I want to ask that you be in prayer for Tabitha Mundy and Becky Brooks. Their grandmother, the anniversary of her death is next week on next Monday. And so just lift them up in prayer. Special relationship that they had with their grandmother, and so we ask to be in prayer. Also, ask you to be in prayer for Cheryl Sterling and Frances Elaine Sterling. The anniversary of her mother's birth. Last week, the anniversary of their mother's death, but next week is the birthday. And so it's just a rough week for them, and ask that you be in prayer. A prayer of celebration is for Harriet Bryan and Dwayne Harris. They will be having a wedding anniversary next week. Normally they go camping somewhere, so try to hit them up before they leave and tell them happy anniversary. And then we continue to be in prayer for COVID. The numbers are increasing. The CDC this past week issued some some standards for Williamson County because of the numbers that are going up there, and also here in Davidson County. So we're just being prayer, encouraging you if you are can get the booster and you have not gotten the booster, to get the booster. And while we're praying for COVID, also we're praying for the increased number of people who are being tested with monkeypox. And we just need to be careful and to be cautious while we're out there. And then, as I say, the heat continues. Certainly we know about it here, and so we just continue to be in prayer and encourage you to check on your neighbors. Amen. Our reading for this week comes from Colossians 3, and I'll be reading verses 1 through 14 for our hearing. Therefore, if you were raised with Christ, look for the things that are above, where Christ is sitting at God's right side. Think about the things above and not things on earth. You died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. So put to death the parts of your life that belong to the earth, such as sexual immorality, moral corruption, lust, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. The wrath of God is coming upon disobedient people because of these things. You used to live this way when you were alive to those things, but now set aside these things, such as anger, rage, malice, slander, and obscene language. Don't lie to each other. Take off the old human nature with its practices and put on the new nature, which is renewed in knowledge by conforming to the image of the one who created it. In this image there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, nor slave nor free, but Christ in all things and in all people. Therefore, as God's choice, holy and love, put on compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Be tolerant with each other. And if someone has a complaint against anyone, forgive each other. As the Lord forgave you, so also forgive each other. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, Trey, we are a little later in the week than we normally do this. We postponed it to tonight, hoping that the air would be on. It's not, and in fact, I probably could have used even another day. I have really gone back and forth with all of the readings for this week. I started them on as I normally do. I started them on Sunday, and I have bounced around. And I think at some point and at some time, I have said, okay, I'm going to go with each one of the with the four readings between the Gospel and the Old Testament and the Psalms. All of them have at some point in time spoken to me. But I guess that as I come tonight, and what kind of grabbed me today was and led me toward this reading from Colossians is I happened to hear a interview, or it was a press conference that took place in Memphis with the it was a cousin, NAACP, and a cousin and the daughter and son of Reverend Dr. Arturo Eason Williams, who was murdered last week in a carjacking. And as I was listening to them, and you're getting some different reports, and I'm not there, and you're hearing different things that are coming out, but I was struck by what her daughter in particular shared in that press conference. If you are not familiar with what happened, she was killed in a carjacking, and the young men that have been arrested for that are all are 16 and 17 years old. I believe the shooter was 16, but three people were arrested. In fact, they were arrested in another car on the next day that they had hijacked and taken. And so a lot of people within in the city have applauded, I guess, the police and for their quick action in coming that, and the DA, and a lot of pressure is being placed upon the DA, and maybe maybe there's not a lot of pressure. Maybe that's what the DA. But for charging these young men in the adult system and trying them as an adult. And certainly I have heard in some of the press conferences that took place after the arrest, and listening to people who are calling for that to happen. But the daughter in her appeal was asking that the district attorney not charge them in adult, but to deal with them in the juvenile court system. I'm sure if you want to go and you want to listen to it, you can find it. I've seen it a couple of places on Facebook, and certainly you can Google it and listen to it. But she had a very compelling appeal, and she based her appeal upon what she felt that her mother would want to see happen in this particular case. She outlined a lot of the work that her mother had been involved in since being in ministry, and just the work itself, she believed, would have compelled her to say that it's a much bigger problem, and the problem is not and will not be resolved by trying these men as an adult. That the system had in some way had failed them, and not only them, but so many, and something needed to be done, and statements needed to be done. And she felt that they would receive more attention to their particular needs if they were handled as juveniles rather than handled and placed in an adult facility, and ultimately sentenced as an adult in our state. I said as I was listening to her, I kept going back to this part of the Paul's letter. We attribute it to Paul. We don't know whether actually Paul wrote it. Maybe there was a scribe or someone who was with him. But we know that at the time that it was written, Paul was in jail and was writing to a people of whom he had heard about. And he had heard about it from, in fact, a former slave that used to be a part of their community, who was now with him in prison, and he was sharing the stories about what was going on. And so we know, and I don't want to go into the early parts of the letter, but I did want to get to the part that I share for the reading today, is because he was saying to them that because they were now in Christ, that their old selves had died away, and that they had taken on a new life that as Jesus was risen, that they too were risen into being new people, into being new creations. And he had some concerns that they were falling back into their old ways of doing things, and he wanted to encourage them to continue to do the things that are new. And he was calling upon them to take on that new life, and to think not in terms of earthly terms, but to think in heavenly terms. Now, there are a lot of people who interpret that and read, oh, okay, well, think about heaven, and and there is a lot of criticism, of people of this passage and what Paul says. Oh well, you're thinking about heavenly thing, you're thinking about the hereafter, and you're just focusing in on that, and that's to be understandable, because that was a concern, because many of the people, and I would imagine many of the people that have become a part of the church in Colossus had joined thinking that Christ was coming back soon, and the time had grown, and he had not coming back. And so while they may have gotten their acts together and done some things, but now the time has come, and so they have gotten back into their old habits. And yes, they may have thought at one time. But I think the invitation and what Paul is inviting, or is inviting them, and what is inviting us, is for us to live lives as though we were living our lives in the hereafter. I think that there are just certain things that if we were in heaven, there are just certain things that we're not going to do. And so for us to have a pattern and for us to live into that way, that we need to start, as I often tell the people here, we need to start practicing. That we can't just, get to heaven and then all of a sudden, we've spent all of our lives doing things one way, and then all of a sudden we're just going to suddenly change and to be able to get along and to do all of the things that we have to begin to practice and getting it. And I think that's what Paul is saying to them, is that you've got to start doing it. You've got to, and it's not something that you can just automatically turn a switch on. That it takes time. That you got to work on it, and you got to work on it each and every day of moving in that direction to where you're not thinking about it, but you're doing it. But we have to be intentional about that. And as I say, the reason that it just kind of resonated with me is that as I heard her, daughter and heard her speaking, what she was in fact inviting us and saying that her mother had worked on was us living and being those new people, those new creations, of moving away from the way that we used to do and the way that we had to move toward a new way of being church. And I am so afraid, and I am concerned that the church, because the church is made up of people, that we have kind of abandoned, I think, who we're supposed to be in a collective sense, and of being the people that we have. That we're going back to being and adopting and taking on the policies of earth, these worldly and how we function. We are more likely to be involved in some political rally than we are to be in a revival, and even in the things that are in the church. We have been so co-optive. I keep hearing this term of a Christian nationalist and a nationalist don't pay a lot of attention to it, but it is a sign of where we are and our attention. And I think that this passage is calling us, and I think it's a time for us to stop and to see whether or not we're taking on some of the things. Paul in the letter, said, you got to put aside, the lying and the anger and the intolerance that we have and the malice that we have, and we express toward one another, this choosing of sides that we have. That we've got to realize that as people of whom we claim, that if we are claiming Christ, then we've got to start taking on, and we have to, and our churches have to take on, and we have to hold our churches accountable for being places of where we practice patience and love and kindness and mercy and forgiveness, and how do we do that, and that we do it in the public arena. So I am at this point. I am going to take you'll probably take a deeper look into this passage for us on Sunday and what it will mean for us as a Hobson, as a small congregation, but still a congregation that says that we want to claim to be followers of Christ, that we claim that we have been risen and that we have new life. That how it is that we are moving beyond, just having good thoughts and, and thinking good thoughts, but how those good thoughts can be seen and manifested in how we act and how we respond to one another. As a part of it, Paul says, look, when you're this way, you got to look at you look at people in a different way, and you don't look at the divisions. You don't look at the things of where we are different. You look at the things of how we are, because we are all one in Christ. And so, looking at our issues around class, our issues around race and ethnicity, just the social constructs that we often put, that we don't bridge those as we once were. We are certainly not as intentional. We are putting up far more barriers between each other. And no more than that comes out than when we have something that outrages the community. And I'm just wondering where are our voices and how do we respond? In particular, how do we respond and how the position that we take if we were to be a part of the press conference. So that's where I'm probably going with it, and so we'll see. Well, Trey, how things going? How much weight have you lost?
Well, I'm still eating. But,
You're still eating, but I know that
this is not a good time for me.
I tell you.
I don't enjoy the heat at all, but it happens.
It happens.
It happens. Yeah.
It happens. So yeah.
Yeah. So I was listening to you talk about the monkeypox.
Yeah.
And I'm not a violent person, right? I don't consider myself to be violent. But if I end up getting the monkeypox, it's like I'm gonna fight somebody. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like, golly, I can understand COVID, and not being able to see that, and not being able to say, well, I got COVID. Maybe I don't have any kind of symptoms, and my bad, I didn't mean to pass it on to you. But the monkeypox, you should know. If you got that, you shouldn't be around nobody. You shouldn't be trying to touch nobody or whatever the case may be. And
yeah, and I don't, and I must admit, I have not gone and looked into a lot of it. I mean, I hear the numbers, and then whenever I see a story about it, the stories, I guess, have the people who are just full blown. I mean, they've got sores, and I mean, it looks horrible. So it would be kind of hard for me. I mean, there's got to be maybe an early stage of it or something like that, because when I'm seeing these big, I get squeamish when I see people with cold sores, and I mean, I'm not, and certainly that's not going to happen, but but I'm wondering in particular, now, the ones that have, when I'm hearing the story, in particular outrage have been the kids. I mean, I think there are 9 people in Davidson County, and something like 4 or 5 of them have been children, under the age of 10. And so, I'm kind of like you, somebody knowing, I mean, but and that's kind of, back to what I was, talking about, and moving in the message. There are people who know they have stuff, And because of whatever reason, whether it's their own anger and stuff, but just don't take the precautions. I mean, I remember, back when AIDS was first on the scene, and you'd have all of these stories where people, knew that they were, positive and still having unprotected sex. You had people of whom, knew, a few months ago, people of whom they knew they had COVID, and still went to work and still, did not report it and did not take the kind of protection. We heard of places, particularly, in some nursing homes and where a huge number of people got infected. And at the point in time, then people were, dying more from it than they are now. But you do have to wonder what would, I would hope, you said that if you would fight, I would hope that you didn't have any friends that was that cavalier. I mean, because that would almost have to be intentional. That'd be just like pulling a gun on you. I mean, and you can't say, well, I accidentally pulled a gun on you, Yeah.
See, I've read some different things about it. It has to be close contact, but it's not descriptive in that what kind of contact we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the sores, I guess you can call them, or whatever, the actual monkey pox.
Right.
And it's like, let's say, hey, what's going on, man? Let's say I potentially have it, right? That I have monkeypox and I have a sore on my arm or whatever. And for some reason, I have Mason and we playing and I didn't know it was monkeypox. I thought it was something else. And then he has it and then you come over and touch Mason and then you have it. It's like, I don't know how questionable or how that contact can be passed on like that. But it's one of those things where I don't care what the last couple of people I shake hands, or I touch, or I talk to, it's like we're gonna have to take 5 minutes. We're just gonna have to talk about it. So
well, I think I have kind of been that way for the last year or so. I mean, I got a few people at church that I hug, but the shaking of hands and I've long since gone in and using paper towels to open the doors when I go in the bathrooms and stuff, all that kind of stuff, because you just don't know.
Right.
Now, I did hear say, well, it cannot be just casual, by shaking hands. That's what somebody said. But I'm like you. I mean, I'm gonna still, if that happens to be, then I'm gonna. I hope that this hand sanitizer and all the other stuff kills it before it gets to that point.
Yeah. So you and Mason went to the movies on Tuesday, huh?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, that was. I think he had a good time. We went, and when we got there, it's a different movie experience than the last time I went. Going to the concession stand and getting your tickets and then showing your thing you got to do on the card and all of that kind of stuff. That was a little thing. And then, but what ultimately happened was I went in and I told him, and then the guy gave me a thing and sold me the tickets, and so we go in and we're trying to get situated, and I get Mason all kind of squared away. And he is really, at this point, he is more interested in seeing all the people coming in. And for every adult, I guess, there was at least another child, but most of them had 2 or 3, the kids that were with them and coming in. So he was just kind of looking at all the kids kind of coming in and doing, his thing. And he was a little impatient, at the beginning because when we were getting the ticket, he was pointing at stuff. Like, oh, what are you pointing at? And so, of course, we got some popcorn, and then I got the popcorn, and then I got him some the thing with the fruit snacks. Yeah, the fruit snacks. And I fixed him some waters because I knew he wasn't going to drink Coke and stuff. So I got that. And then he kept pointing at something else. And I was like, what do you want? So he was pointing on the thing, and he wanted some M&Ms. And I was like, so he could say M&Ms. I said, and the guy said, oh, we don't have any M&Ms. So I said, well, we don't have it. If you don't have that, we got to go. And then Mason was like, Skittles, you gonna get something out of this. So when we got there, he was kind of, ready for that. And so we were sitting there, and he kind of watched some of the previews, and I guess all the previews kind of getting the kid. And then it started, because we're going to Minions. I'm thinking we're going to the new Minions, but it ended up being the first Minions. And what really got me was, I'm looking at all these people in here, surely they had to see Minions before, because Mason has seen it, I know, 200 times and going through. But for him, it was cool, and he was singing the songs, he was, doing the lines, he was having a good time, and part of it, is the, kind of the proud, grandfather, he knows this whole movie, and while some of the people around him might not appreciate it, the fact that he was doing it. But it was also, he kept trying to engage. It was a woman who was sitting a seat over from him, but he kept trying to engage the woman. And so once it got near the end, and he knew the end was coming, and normally at that point in time when he's at home, he goes to something else and does something else. And he asked that woman for the remote. So I guess he said, okay, she must be controlling the remote because Granddad ain't got it. It ain't over here. So, but he had a good time. And then afterwards, went to vote, and he went to vote with me, and he was, very well behaved and engaging of people. So I think he had a good day. He had a good day. I know Grandpa had a good day.
Yeah, all right.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in and spending some time with us. It should be, I'm not really for sure, but it should be a little shorter than normally our time together, because certainly it's hot in here and we got to get out of here, but wanted to spend this time with you because, as I say, it has become a very important time for us. And I do want to encourage you, if there are things that you want us to talk about, or you have some suggestions for us to talk about, then let us know. We'd like to hear from you. And then if I may not have said it during our prayer times, if you have things that you want us to pray for, please let me know. You can send them to me on Facebook or email me or text me. Call me up, because we do believe in the power of prayer in this place. So I encourage you, if you did not vote by the time this comes out, early voting would have been over. If you did not vote early, I do encourage you to go out and to vote next week. It is important for all of us to participate in that process. Because it is a way for us to be able to make a statement in our community. So thank you for spending some time with us, and pray all is well.